everyone. Welcome to another Sunday Nights with Faye Seidler. It's me, Faye. It's Sunday night, so we're going to start our show. The first thing I have for you is the Red River Child Advocacy Center is having open house on the 3rd, so on Tuesday of this week. It's also in correspondence with our Giving Tuesdays, where a lot of organizations have match funding. I don't know who necessarily participates and how it might work, but I believe for now, or for the 3rd only, your donation will be matched or basically doubled for at least the Red River Child Advocacy Center. You can also do that for YouthWorks for a different thing that they have through Thrivent, but these are times that you can double the amount that your donation has an impact for organizations. Well said, me. A cool opportunity is for your, I believe, Cass County or maybe Fargo residents. You can name a snowplow. I think that's fun. You should submit a name. It can't be copyrighted, so it can't be the Transformers, but you can submit a name that you think is cool for a snowplow. I think that's fun. I think it's a good thing to do as a society, is to name our snowplows. In less fun news, but good news, we have a training coming up from League of Women Voters. It'll be an advocacy training looking at all you need to know for the coming legislative session, which will be happening in January for North Dakota. We have a session every other year, so this will be our 69th session, nice, that is coming up. It'll be the time that our lawmakers come and bring up, vote, discuss, dissect, and eventually make law. Will likely be about 1,000 bills this year. They can range from things like property taxes to abortion rights. They can talk about LG plus issues or where trans individuals can or can't be in society. So it's typically a time worth following, and it's always worth talking to your lawmakers about the North Dakota that you would like to see. That is, the advocacy training coming up will be a very useful point to see how you can interact with our government. I will say it is very easy. I don't know much about the rest of the nation, but North Dakota is incredibly transparent and makes it very easy for constituents to have their voice be heard. If there's one thing I greatly respect about North Dakota, it's that. It's very interactive and very easy to be interactive with our lawmakers in this state. So use your voice, talk about what's important to you, because if you don't, then it's never going to come up. It'll never be part of session unless you talk to people about it. Segueing right into our political news, the North Dakota attorney has requested a dismissal of Gender Justice's lawsuit against the state for the hormone therapy ban on grounds it's unconstitutional due to parental rights as well as other issues. I am not an expert at this case, but reviewing it over the last year, it seems unlikely that a judge would dismiss it at this point. The judge has indicated that there is legal standing here to talk about. I'm not sure if that's the right framework. Don't hold me to that, not a lawyer, but effectively that there is merits to this case to explore. And to my understanding, it's going to be a high bar of scrutiny when we're looking at this, because what we are doing is taking away a parent's ability to pursue the best possible health care for their child. If North Dakota cares about one thing, it's not trans people, but it is parents and parents' rights to effectively make sure their kids are treated well, or at least to their beliefs. Interestingly, the bill sponsor of the trans medical ban was a bill sponsor in the special session of, I believe, 2021, where he talked about the need for individuals to have the right to pursue medication that they would want. He was at the time talking about ivermectin and his wife's ability to get it, I believe, but it's just very hypocritical that someone who put a bill up to look for and fight for medical autonomy of individuals and patients is the champion of making sure that youth and parents can't access that. It's a terrible law. It's not founded by any sort of modern medicine, and part of the coverage of this was the attorney of North Dakota, one of the attorneys of North Dakota, saying that the evidence isn't clear on this, and that's complete hogwash. The evidence is very clear on this. The Standards of Care version 8, the standard of treatment that we have for trans individuals, has over 1,500 citations for care. It is true that you can find a study here or there that questions trans care, but from a actual medical standpoint, it's irrelevant compared to the wealth of knowledge we have on this, as well as clinical experience and trials. The evidence to the contrary is often just contrarian. It is literally there because you are trying to stop this care rather than any good faith attempt to make sure that care is sound or supported for the people who need it. All evidence shows that denying trans care hurts everyone, not just trans individuals, but cisgender folk as well, for a myriad of reasons that I won't get into in this summary. But I believe the story should end when we say that all medical associations support this care. Anytime the story continues after that, we are selling snake oil. We are selling this idea that all of our medical institutes have gotten this wrong. Based on what? There's no grounds for that. There's no legitimate competitor to our national medical organizations that it's worth listening to in regard to medical care for individuals. And the last thing I'll say about that is that trans care was not developed in a lab in San Francisco 10 years ago. It has been part of our medical organizations and institutes since the 1950s. It has been developed alongside every other medicine that we have through endocrinological treatment, through looking at reproductive care. It has always been part of it, treated and trained by the doctors that treat everything else. It is not special or unique. It is simply medicine. And that's why these cases are so unfortunate. They are so politically and biasly driven, full of prejudice and often misinformation. Trans care is medically necessary. It is, by all evidence and accounts, something kids need to save their lives. And I hope that this lawsuit is successful, because short of it, we are losing kids. In other news, in politics, the support for abortion bans has been reducing in North Dakota. North Dakota has one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country, disallowing abortion in any state of pregnancy. I believe, I could be wrong about that, with the exception of incest or rape, but only within the first 6 weeks of pregnancy. So very draconian, very awful, very life-threatening for a lot of women or individuals who are able to get pregnant in our state. And I think a lot of people in North Dakota are realizing that. Speaking of polling, I believe that poll was something that was commissioned and then reported on by the North Dakota News Co-op. I don't know. I'm sorry, Michael. But they also showed more things about school meals, general school choice, and where our state isn't all those things. It looks like our state really would love our kids to be fed, so that's good. Hopefully we don't have any more ogres in the room in our 2025 session. Little 2023 legislative joke for you. But it looks like there is a surprisingly a large amount of support for school choice. School choice is diverting taxpayer public funding into private schools who don't have any responsibility to our state. It's not good by any means. Private schools are a fine option for people who want to divest from our culture and society, but we shouldn't be divesting our funds from our culture and public and society to private entities with private interests. That isn't good. So that's my position on it. I'm not reporting that from a neutral lens. School choice is bad by every account. Public education is the cornerstone of any good society, in my opinion. And the more that we support our public education, the better everyone does. It is one of our great equalizers. It's one of the great parts of the so-called American dream that we can all, as kids, have the opportunity to learn and eventually go on to something else. And the more we divert those opportunities to individuals or to divert funding to private schools that not everyone has access to, well, the harder that gets to attain. So it's unfortunate that our support is so high. I understand it's because people are frustrated with our schools, but that doesn't make the situation better. It just creates two cooks you don't like in the kitchen instead of one. It's important to support what we have so we have a kitchen we actually like, to make that metaphor extend far, far longer than it ever should have. To cover more news on spicy things, the Fargo City Commission was voting on potentially removing the needle exchange program based on Commissioner Michelle Turnberg falsely believing that needle exchange programs generated untold needles into the community. I have a story from F5 Project, who works a lot with incarcerated individuals, making sure there's not recidivism, not going back, people who are in prison to not go back and to have support. But they are effectively a harm reduction organization in a lot of their efforts, and they were very strongly opposed to reducing the needle exchange program. Everyone that works in healthcare or social work or in research also opposes removing that, because there's no through line where the needle exchange program is generating thousands of needles onto the Fargo streets. So all the people who know what they're talking about talked about that at the city commission, wasting dozens of hours of important people's times. And then the Michelle Turnberg and Dave Pipecorn, two of our city commissioners who seem to want to abolish the government, continue to vote in favor of it. So they did not care about the research or the testimony. They're experts that came out. They did not care that people spent dozens of hours of their time collectively to fight nonsense that was brought up. So they are dead weight. Like, I don't know, like, it's it's okay to have a legitimate concern that you explore. And if you are a city leader, you have a certain responsibility to investigate the issues you think are a problem before you bring them up to actual voting on them based on what you want. You have a responsibility to talk to maybe the needle exchange program or the experts in self-harm in healthcare before you waste everyone's time. You have a responsibility. You then have a responsibility to listen to the people who talk to you about the reality of the world and then change your vote based on what's real. You have a responsibility to that. There is grounds for disagreement that we can have. There are. But there's no reality in which needle exchange programs create more needles on the street. That's not what happens. And if we're not agreeing to reality, then get out, just get out of government. Like you don't deserve to be there. Like I am so frustrated that every week we have to listen to more nonsense from people who have no idea that they're talking about, trying to eliminate programs that will kill people if they're not there. I'm a little heated on this one. In other news, there is a new location for our warming center that will be in the Cass Public Health Building. This is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, South Fargo. It's in between West Acres and basically our downtown Fargo area, but there's not anything really around it. To my understanding, there are going to be shuttles that go from specifically downtown Fargo to that area and then from that area back to downtown Fargo in the morning and the night. These shuttles aren't the bus or transit system, but their own system. So it sounds like there is at least some access to this. Folks are reminded that these emergency shelters are not shelters. They are not intended to be shelters. They are emergency services for people that would die otherwise out in the out in cold temperatures. So it's good that we have it. It's good that this exists. We obviously need more help and support for individuals experiencing homelessness, but this is kind of what we have going on right now. Speaking of issues impacting those experiencing homelessness, the Missouri Valley Coalition of Homeless People had a awareness week a couple of weeks ago where they dived into a lot of the issues impacting homelessness across the month, or at least across the week. There are efforts to keep our population safe all across the state, and I think it's important as we go into 2025's legislative session that we put more funding into this. New data has come out to show that transition-related regret is extremely rare, and even after 4+ years of treatment for trans youth who are on hormone therapy treatment, they find very high levels of satisfaction. This is not new in the sense that we have known this. This is just more evidence that piles on to the wealth of knowledge that we have. None of these studies are smoking guns. We know that trans care is safe and effective. Any contrary position is often looking at very limited data sets that are very highly engineered to make it seem like there is problems in this care when there aren't. Any problems that we find are related to just the fact no medical care can be perfect. However, there are times where people pursue trans care and it's not great for them. It's everyone's goal in trans healthcare to reduce that as much as possible and to provide as much support as we can to both trans youth and cisgender youth along their journey. To be trans is not a binary. You don't just go in and say, am I trans or not? A switch gets flipped and you get care for the rest of your life. When you get care as a trans youth, it is daily check-ins. It's seeing how you're doing. It's responding to that. And maybe sometimes a transition is exactly what a kid needs. It is 90+% of the time. Sometimes it's not working out for them and then you shift, you pivot. That's how healthcare works for kind of anyone and any treatment. And once we separate ourselves from the emotions we have about what it is to be trans or the messages that we may have heard online or in politics, and just realize this is any other care. We respond to the needs of our kids, and if the stuff we're doing isn't working, we do something else. But what we know is that for trans kids, they know who they are, they know what they need, and it is effective for the vast majority of them to be safe, to be happy, and to thrive as kids. In great news, because I always love journalism, MSUM has their paper, The Advocate, being brought back as a grassroots effort. I don't actually fully know what this means. I'll need to look into the story more, but I just saw it as a snippet and wanted you to see it too. I think any kind of access to journalism is good. I think journalism is a bedrock of our society because without knowledge on what's happening, we cannot be well informed on making decisions about our future and present. So any journalism is good. I'm glad that we see something like this happening in MSUM. The final story, it's actually just echoing things I say, but volunteering is good for you. When I sell people to volunteer or to donate, I often don't sell it as a selfish thing or selfless thing for you to do. It is so awesome to volunteer and to be connected to people and to feel part of something. Being part of a community is the greatest protective factor anyone has when they feel like they belong, and volunteering is a way to feel that. If you feel disconnected from society right now, if you feel kind of lost or alone, volunteer. Get involved with people, and you will find you feel much more connected to everyone and to the cause and to the future. You feel better about everything. So there's a column on that that exemplifies all the values I always talk about with volunteering. So thank you for that story, April. Hope you enjoyed the opening. I hope you enjoy the next stories, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
My name is Sarah Opitz. I am a licensed addictions counselor, licensed social worker, proud graduate of MSUM, and a person in recovery from substance use and with lived experience with homelessness. What I come to you tonight about is sharing a little bit about our event that's coming up on Tuesday. It's our Mission Possible Gala. It's our very first fundraising event ever. It will be at the Radisson Blue on the 3rd of December, starting at 5 o'clock. We will have a silent auction. It's a great opportunity for us to share about some of the accomplishments we've made in the last 7 years, as well as sharing some of the experience and stories of the staff, the volunteers, and some of the graduates who come through the program. It's just really an opportunity for us to come together as a community and talk about some of the positives amidst what seems like sometimes an ongoing struggle for those who are facing substance use, homelessness, mental health, and then their loved ones who are watching and trying to support them on the sidelines. So just to share a little bit about how or what the Lotus Center is. The Lotus Center Inc. originally developed from 7 founders about 7 years ago. Of those 7, half of us were people who were in recovery, and some of us were, and the other half were providers. What we all shared mutually was an understanding and kind of a building frustration that the way the world was addressing addiction and substance use at the time wasn't really working. If you look at the last 30 years of how we've addressed substance use through like abstinence-based mentality, the success rate of an individual leaving a residential facility has been about 10%. Will achieve about 1 year of long-term recovery. And for those of us who can share with us, if that statistic was based on people you genuinely care about, yourself, family, neighbors, friends, a 10% success rate of 1 year is unacceptable. And it should be something that should be addressed. And we saw this. This was a conversation that had been going on for quite a while. Is like we're seeing all these barriers, and whether it is running into homelessness, isolation, that revolving door process that everybody talks about, where people are coming in and out and in and out. And so we started as a group studying evidence-based practices that were being utilized internationally to address addiction with other individuals much wiser than ourselves, and had found better success rates. And one of the things we identified was harm reduction approach to addiction, which was very much a novel idea about a decade ago when it came to the treatment realm in our area, especially in Fargo-Moorhead. And I love to share about how the original first newspaper article that came out was that we were addiction treatment that allowed people to use. So I like to share about how we use harm reduction in our outpatient treatment programming at the Lotus Center. What we really is about is just as similar to like an individual would put on a helmet before they got on their motorbike, or they would fasten in their seatbelt. The whole process of it addresses like, how do we reduce harm? How do we make it safer so that the day comes when you finally decide that maybe you want to stop, that you're still around to make the decision and that choice. And that was really the important part, is that we recognize as people in recovery that no day is promised to us, but maybe those few days in between that we still get, there's still a big win. And so what we usually have is individuals come in and they might say like, hey, you know what, I'm a daily drinker, I'm showing up in detox at least once or twice a month, and like, I don't know, I'm scared, I don't really know if I could stop drinking, but I would really like to slow down. And so the conversation after that is like, okay, well, maybe residential isn't an option because maybe they have an apartment or they have a job or they have kids or they have a dog. There's things still very pertinent in their life that are they're not willing to give up those last things because they're the motivation to why they're seeking change anyways. So we will talk to them about, it's like, how can we buffer this? How can we utilize the whole gamut of services, from like medication to therapy to supports within the community, to just decrease the use that they're experiencing at this time. And it opens up that door to change and having those further conversations, because we're not telling them how they need to take care of themselves. We're working with them side by side. Um, and that's kind of how that is. Like, don't we celebrate those small wins too. Like, I've seen the progress of change happen within the client, where they've decided that they want to stop using marijuana eventually, maybe because they recognize it has just as much control over them as their methamphetamine use originally had. But that is completely up to them, and it's client driven programming for them at that aspect, unless we get to a point where we are concerned about their safety all around. The Lotus Center Inc. also provides services as an naloxone access point. So we provide Narcan and naloxone, which is that life-saving reversal agent, within the Fargo-Moorhead area and surrounding areas. We provide wound care kits, testing strips, free training for anybody who's interested. And we also really endorse that anybody who's interested in learning and training others to come on in, so we can provide those resources and continue to spread that mission, that love, because we all really care, and some of us don't live in the Fargo-Moorhead area. Um, so, so another piece that we really recognized as Lotus Center was getting up and going was that, and this was particularly identified by the individuals in recovery, was that treatment is just a small portion. If you were to look at it like a train, maybe treatment is the dining car. And we were missing big pieces to that, especially with street outreach and then like long-term care and support. And where these pieces were really essential into either getting those services and treatment, or like continuing to benefit that individual after they finish treatment, is where Recovery Engaged Communities comes in. It's considered a recovery community organization. It provides drop-in services to individuals from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We have recovery peer specialists there to connect people with the community and those resources that are actually outside the treatment realm. They will go to people, they will take them to their service providers, take them to recovery community events and meetings. Just really continue that relationship as a person with lived experience, showing them how it's worked for them themselves, and sharing that kind of relationship. The rec also provides a safe space for people to have recovery community events, so there's a place for that. We also have that space is shared also with many of the recovery community meetings. So there's a variety of them that will utilize that space throughout the week for the regularly held meetings. Other than that, like, one of the biggest things that we really like to just share is that we're always out there. We're willing to meet people where they're at. We will come to people in the jails. We'll do chemical dependency assessments at the county jails. If there's an individual at the hospital, we will make it a point to try to come up and visit them at the hospital, because those are those times where people just really need a face and a space and a person who says, I've been here before, I know what this is like, and I can tell you that life gets better, and let me show you how. So we really are on the boots on the ground kind of thing in the trenches, and really active in our own community, creating some advocacy and opening up new options for everybody. Last piece I wanted to share real briefly that we're really excited to share. Part of the reason for the fundraiser is that we have a new program developing. It's called Solid Ground. We like the term because it's always important to find some solid ground in your recovery. And that is our boarding and lodging piece that will be opening up here on the 1st of December. That will be accessible, and we hope to just expand on that. And this is a network and a community and a house where individuals who are looking to find their own recovery can support one another in that journey themselves while utilizing the other resources in the community. So, with that being said, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you a wonderful rest of the year and a new year as it comes in. And we hope to see you on the 3rd, or love to get in contact with you. Please check us out on Facebook at any time, to check to see the events that we have going on. We just had a Thanksgiving where we helped serve like 60 individuals, and we have more to come, more events in the making. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you everyone for watching my show. That's all I have for today. I hope you have a good rest of your week. I hope we see you back here next week. Just want to give some thank yous to all the folks here who contributed to the show, who made it all a great time and informed us about the cool stuff they're doing. He will be my outro probably for a while until I choose to change it. You all have a good day. Bye.